Greetings, beloved humans. It is I, Christina, here at Fit and Bendy in Los Angeles. And today we are doing a progression of movements to get in touch with, strengthen, and open up the psoas muscle. Now, if you find yourself wondering what the psoas muscle is, I highly recommend that you check out my video on what the psoas muscle is and also my video on core muscles, because those two videos are going to give you a lot of context that are going to help this whole thing go a lot better. This is not a workout video. This is a video on movements and meditations that you can do to get in better touch with the psoas muscle, which is so important and yet so mysterious and very potentially challenging to find. So we are going to work on that psoas. And in order to do this, not a workout, you will need some stuff. You will need some slippy sidey socks. You will need a yoga block or equivalent object. And you will need some sort of piece of furniture that is preferably smooth on top and is about the height of a chair. So like a dining room chair that's made out of wood or a nice smooth coffee table, those kinds of things will help. And a mat to lay on, because we're gonna lay on the floor. So meet me on the floor with that stuff. We're gonna start by trying to give our psoas a little massage. So to do this, it's easiest to find if you're just laying on your back with your knees bent, feet flat on the floor. And you want to start by trying to relax your abdominal muscles, these guys, as much as possible. Because the psoas, the only way you can really touch it is by going through your abs, through your guts, all the way to the psoas, which is about this deep into your body. And it's super fun. So what you want to try to do is feel like, okay, so here's my rectus abdominis, right? So if I had a six pack, that's where that would be. And then my obliques come around here. And in between those two, there's a space. And that's what I want to try to find. So if you use your hip bones as a reference point, you want to be about one little step in and a couple steps up. And then feel around in there for that space between those two muscles. And that's where you want to stick your fingers. And then keeping those muscles as relaxed as possible. I like to use my other hand to help because you have to go pretty deep. You have to push kind of hard. I'm going to push through. And then right about there, I can feel something kind of hard. And when I poke at it, it's kind of unpleasant. Usually for pretty much every psoas I've poked at in my life with all the different clients I've worked at, people report that having their psoas poked is at best slightly unpleasant. And if you are someone with a uterus who menstruates, it can feel a little bit like a menstrual cramp when you poke at it because the psoas actually sits right next to the uterus. So there's a similarity of sensation there. And when you're poking at it, you want to notice, what does it feel like? Does it feel super tense and hard and painful? Can it get a little bit of squish and give to it? Does it feel like not so bad? And that can give you a little bit of a gauge of the state, the general resting state of your psoas muscle. And you can come back to poking at this muscle throughout at any point in this workout to kind of see if it's changing, see if you feel it slightly differently. You can try the other side too. Good to poke both of them. They might feel different. So again, I'm finding my hip bone coming a little bit in and a little bit up. Exactly how much is really going to depend on the size of your torso, right? But if you were to draw a diagonal line between your belly button and your hip bone, it's going to be kind of in the middle of that. And I'm trying to feel like here's my oblique, here's my rectus abdominis, here's the gap between the two of them. And I'm going to sink my fingers through the belly fat, through the muscle, through the guts, and there she is. That's psoas. Oh, left side. Fun times. And I can feel my psoas is generally kind of on. It has a hard time relaxing. And it's hard to really massage your own psoas muscle enough to get it to fully relax. So that's not exactly what we're doing here. You can go to a professional body worker who specializes in psoas release, and they can do this really like particularly horrendous process where they press very hard on it and get it to release. I don't recommend trying to do that to yourself. It's just near impossible. This is more to give you a sense of where that muscle is and what it feels like. So when we poke at it, we give it a sensation, right? I'm now having a sensation in my psoas so that as I start to learn to move it and contract it, I have a sense of where I'm supposed to feel that feeling. Now, you can also sometimes get a little bit of a sensation in the psoas by finding its attachment point. And to do this, I like to just lay with my feet together and my knees open to the side. And again, here are my hip bones, right? So I'm using those as bony landmarks. And I'm going to go down and in somewhat. And you can feel where your adductor is right here. And that in between the hip bones and the adductor, which should feel like a hard tendon, there's like a divot where it kind of goes in. And again, it's a gap between the muscles. And that's where we can have access to dig our fingers in deeply. And you might be able there to feel a sort of a lumpy, bumpy bit. And you can run your fingers back and forth across it. Now, this isn't the psoas muscle itself, but it could potentially be the tendon of the psoas muscle where it attaches to the bone. You can kind of feel it. There's a lot of stuff in here, and you don't want to poke too hard because there are also lymph glands in here that you don't want to poke at. But it just gives you, again, a tactile sense with your hands, with your nerves of where that psoas is. And unfortunately, those are kind of the only two places without cutting yourself open that you can actually touch your own psoas. So now that you have a little bit of an experience of the psoas and where to feel it, we're going to see if we can try to activate it. And to do this, put on your socks. I have these ridiculous socks from the Andy Warhol Museum. I have no idea what this graphic is supposed to be. If anyone can tell me, I am vaguely curious. But whatever kind of socks you have, whatever pattern you have, the important thing is that they're kind of slippy and that you have a piece of furniture handy that is slidey and that you can bring together slippy and slidey for ease of movement. And we're going to start with just the right side. And you want to find a way to have your right heel up on your slidey piece of furniture. Left foot's going to be flat on the floor, and we're starting to work on the right side. And if you just slide your foot back and forth, I mean, most of us can do that with zero effort or brain power at all. But if you put your hand on these muscles on the side of your hip here, most of us are using predominantly these muscles unless you are lucky enough to have a really great relationship with your psoas. And you can feel these muscles work, and these muscles may be very tight on you. And if you're curious more about hip anatomy, you can check out my hip anatomy link there. But we want to try to bias the psoas muscle attached right here and unbias these muscles. I find it useful to do that by lengthening through my side waist. So I'm going to really take this right hip bone and put it a little bit closer to my piece of furniture than my left hip bone. I'm lengthening through the side waist. Then the other thing that I want to do is make sure that my spine doesn't move. So I'm just going to gently cinch up my meat corset here. And it's just a gentle activation of these muscles. Now, does my spine have to be flat on the floor? It does not. That can be useful when you're first starting out because the main thing you want to make sure of is that your spine isn't moving. So if you have a hard time stabilizing your spine, sometimes keeping your spine flat on the floor can be a default way of just making sure it's not doing anything because the psoas attaches to the spine. And if the spine is moving, it's harder for the psoas to do its job. So we're flattening the spine out to start with. And then I'm going to take my opposite hand and put it on my inner thigh. And I'm going to very gently press my inner thigh into my hand. And that's to really try to bias this inside line. So by getting my adductor, my inner thigh muscle working, it's going to help that psoas get just a little bit more bias towards that instead of these outside muscles. So I've tilted my pelvis, I've anchored my back down, I've engaged my inner thigh, and then I'm going to just gently drag my heel very slightly towards me, back and forth. And what I want to feel is that as I'm sliding that heel towards me, there's an experience connecting that inner thigh up to the muscle that we poked at. And as I slide it away, there's a release in that area. So I'm trying to create some dynamics in that muscle. As I do this, I can potentially, you'll have to relax your ab muscles a little bit to do this, poke at my psoas at the same time, and I can feel it. It's engaging, it's getting tighter, and it's releasing a little bit. Here it is engaging. Here it is releasing. I have a relationship with my psoas. We can talk to each other now. Now, I've been practicing this a lot for quite a few years. When I first tried doing this, I had no idea. I could not feel it. I could not experience it. My hip kept riding up. If you notice that this hip really wants to ride back up, then you're definitely biasing these outer hip muscles and your psoas is unenthusiastic. So pause me for as long as you need to. Spend some time doing some breathing and just feeling this muscle. If it doesn't come to you today, if it doesn't come to you immediately, this, I promise, is a worthwhile way for you to spend your time to try to get in touch with this vitally important muscle and to be able to feel that this muscle can, at your will, contract and release, just as you would with a bicep or a hamstring or a quadricep, just like it would with any other muscle you have a good relationship with. Let's go ahead and try the left side. So bring that right foot down, left foot up. And again, let's find our checklist of tilting that pelvis down a little bit, so lengthening through the side waist, anchoring the spine, or at the very least, cinching up the meat corset a little bit, and then gently pressing that inner thigh into your hand. All of those things are happening, right? There we go. And I'm going to try to slide that foot in and slide it away. And it can be helpful here to really think about this leg being extremely heavy on the block. So imagine that my foot weighs like 100 pounds and I'm just having to drag that heavy foot up and back. Because as soon as we start trying to lift the leg, which we will do in a moment, it makes it more likely for us to use these other muscles. And again, you can stick your hands in through the abs and see if you can feel that deep work in the psoas there. Feel it. Oh, there it is contracting. There it is relaxing. And you might feel really different on the left side than the right side. Our muscles are different right to left. We do not live symmetrical lives. So you might need to spend more time. Again, pause me whenever you want to. You might need to spend more time on one side or the other. And the good thing about the side that's easier to find is you can use that feeling, that experience to teach the other side. Be like, hey, this is what I want it to feel like on both sides, right? So let's just do a couple more of those left side. Really see if you can feel that muscle, that heavy leg, dragging that leg in. And when you feel the psoas for the first time, potentially, like really feel it working, feel that psoas bias, it is so magical. You feel the connection between your lower body and your torso. And you can feel like suddenly your leg moves a little differently. And these other hip flexors get to relax a little bit more. It's pretty fantastic. It's been life-changing for me. All right, so let's switch legs again. And let's imagine that you've done a whole bunch of practice on that. And you're like, thanks, Christina. What's the next step? Well, here it is. Now, if just doing what we just did, like if you weren't having the relationship with the psoas yet, just keep doing that. Stop the video here. Come back to this later. All right? Because it doesn't help to escalate it if you don't have step one. That's why I said this is more a progressive meditation than it is a workout. So once you're starting to feel like, okay, I can feel my psoas working on this slide, the next step will be to float this leg up and bring it back down. Now, as soon as we add the weight of the leg, that psoas is having to work harder. It's having to manage that whole leg down there. It's going to be much more tempting for the spine to do this if you're not well anchored with your meat corset. So thinking about getting that spine flat on the floor for now. This is probably the easiest way to make sure that your spine is not compensating here. And the other thing is, it's going to be more tempting now as you lift the leg to hike up that hip and start to go to these outer muscles. So I at the beginning of learning how to do this, really pushed this hip down and kind of held it down in order to keep those muscles a little quieter as I started to lift and lower this leg. And I'm constantly checking in with these muscles. Can I keep these muscles here squishy and still lift my leg from that psoas? Yeah, can I? Today? Pretty much. It's challenging. And this is, I've worked with, I don't know how many clients on this over the years, and it is challenging for almost everyone that I've worked with. This is not intuitive for most humans because we spend too much time sitting and our posture isn't fantastic. For most of us, our psoas is not in great shape. Just the case. Let's go ahead and try the left side. So I'm lengthening through the left side waist. I'm making my leg nice and heavy out there. I'm anchoring my spine with my meat corset. I'm squeezing my inner thigh. And now can I feel my left psoas lifting that leg up here and lowering it back down? And I'm not poking all the way through to my psoas right now because I need my meat corset to anchor me. But by putting my hands here, I'm just kind of having a little bit of an experience of like, oh, hey, there's that work in there. And when that psoas starts to work, it feels a little bit like magical fairies have come and are just like lifting your leg up off the block, because the psoas is so good at leg lifting once it gets the hang of it, once it's working as it's optimally designed to do. It's so much better at leg lifting than these other muscles. And that's part of why this work is so important, because it's just going to distribute the work in your body a lot more evenly. Let's do a couple more on this side. Notice I am not lifting my leg up high. We're saving that. Right now, we're just floating it up just a little bit. Magical fairies lifting up just a little bit, lowering it back down. Let's do one more. Now, if you have just moved to this particular part of the progression, you might do a couple of lifts and your leg might start to shake and you might be like, wow, I'm barely doing anything and I'm getting tired so fast. That psoas muscle gets tired so fast. Well, if you're new to using the psoas, that you might be super strong in other places and that psoas might be like, this is a lot of work for me. This is new. So just do a couple, then take a rest, move it around, do a couple more, gradually build that strength the way that you would with any other muscle that you want to train. All right, so where do we go from here, you might ask? So now we're just going to lower what we're lifting our foot off of. So you can use a yoga block. You can use, I just switch this around, right? So just getting that foot closer to the floor. And then I'm not going to walk you through all this because it's the same idea. I'm lengthening through the side waist, anchoring the spine, inner thigh, trying to lift. And the lower the foot goes, the lower the leg is closer to the floor, the harder it is to organize this with the body and to feel the psoas work. Now I'm asking it to do a little bit of a bigger range. Now, once you start to lower the leg too, you can start to experiment with, can I lift my leg up a little higher? Now, I will tell you this. If you lift your leg higher than you're ready to go, this is going to happen. That hip's going to hike up and it's going to be these muscles again. And that is because if your psoas is new to having these dynamics, the shorter it gets, the harder time it's going to have. And as soon as the muscle is shortening as my leg's coming in, right? It's hauling my thigh bone in towards my spine. And once that muscle gets to a certain length of shortness, it's going to be like, oh no, I don't want to shorten anymore. Shortening is very scary for me. Somebody else do the work. And it's going to hand off that work to those other muscles. We don't want to do that right now. We don't want to do that. So only lift your leg up as high as you can, keeping that psoas muscle working and keeping these other guys chill AF, right? We really want these guys to just be working as little as possible. I can even put my hand back on the hip and feel that hip pushing away. And as soon as it starts to ride up, that's the psoas offloading to somebody else. Let's try the same thing on the left side. Might feel really different. So pushing that left hip bone down, anchoring the spine, inner thigh, Can I feel it on the left side? Hello, left psoas. And again, remember, it might feel really different. Pause me whenever you need to in order to check in with your body. Notice if there's one side that needs maybe a little bit more work than the other. For me, this left side, this hip really, really wants to do the work. So I have to really focus. I call it a meditation for a reason. It's a moving meditation where you're trying to get in touch with your body that you don't necessarily have a deep relationship with, right? And that is a huge part of the gift of doing this work. It's small, quiet, not particularly sexy or Instagrammable work, but man, getting this so as to have a healthier life, so worth it. All right, let's imagine now that we've gotten through that whole progression and it's feeling good and you're able to feel the psoas. Well, what's next? I bet you can guess. We're going to lift off the floor. And we're going to try for as much range this time as we can get. So again, lengthen, anchor, adductor, inner thigh, and can you lift all the way from the floor? And how high up can you? And now we're going to start to challenge this top. So how high up can I get and still keep that psoas bias? Mine starts to punk out right about there. And then lowering back down. Now, if you are someone who cares a lot about being able to lift their leg up towards their face, if you're a dancer or a circus performer or a gymnast and you want to be able to have that active flexibility where you can kick or hold your leg up really high, this muscle is the only muscle that can really do that. It is the only hip flexor muscle that attaches high up enough to be able to lift your leg that high. If you are trying to lift your leg to your face with these other muscles, you're going to have to do some weird stuff with your pelvis, and it is going to be very strained and challenged. So getting this psoas to shorten is going to be vitally important to that work. So now we're going to start to feel how we can get that psoas to work through a greater range of motion, getting it closer and closer to the face without outsourcing to these other muscles. Let's go ahead and try it on the left side. Burk, anchor, inner thigh, and try to find that lift. And lower. And how close can you get the left leg? Might feel really different, right? And for you dancers who might kick better with one side than the other, your ability to find your psoas on one side or the other might be part of why that happens. Because one of the things that can happen when we don't have a great relationship with our psoas is that we can end up with a tighter hamstring on that side. Because our body's like, well, we don't really feel great and stable with that leg closer to the face. So let's tighten up the hamstring in order to keep that psoas from having to shorten. Isn't that interesting? That's a thing that your body can do. It's just doing the best it can to protect you. Let's do one more here on the left side. And lower back down. And the last part of this strengthening progression is to do it from a fully extended hip. Now, it can be helpful here to start with a little bit of a slide. So I'm actually going to curl this mat up. And my right leg's going to be fully extended. So now my psoas is in a more lengthened position, like it would be if I were standing up and had good posture. But it starts out with the same thing. I'm going to lengthen through my side waist, and I'm going to anchor my spine with my meat corset, and I'm going to feel a little bit of engagement through my inner thigh. So I almost squeeze my leg in slightly. It can also be slightly helpful to a very small external rotation here. And my leg is heavy on the floor, and it starts out similar to our very first exercise where my leg is heavy on the floor and I start to just drag it in. I'm dragging it along the floor. And I can feel that engagement deep underneath the right side of my abs. And at a certain point, I start to lift the leg up and I bring it in towards my chest. And that psoas muscle It's getting shorter and shorter and shorter. But by now I've trained it over time through those other exercises so I can do that. And then that psoas muscle gets to lengthen. And as my foot hits the floor, it gets to lengthen even more. And now I want to see what it feels like to try to get that psoas muscle to relax completely at the bottom. So the relaxing is part of the workout. We need a psoas with full dynamics, contracting and relaxing, not just one or the other. Let's try it again. Drag that heel along the floor. That leg is super heavy. I'm keeping this length in my side waist. I'm making sure this hip doesn't ride up. This is basically the starting position of the last exercise, right? When I start to float that leg up towards my chest. Keep lengthening, keep lengthening, keep that engagement through the psoas. How deep can I get it? It goes a little further this time. Nice. And lowering back down. And as that foot hits the ground, I'm finding this full extension. That psoas is able to lengthen. Let's do the same thing on the left side a couple times. So extend that left leg out, lengthen through the left side waist, anchor the meat corset, little inner thigh squeeze, maybe slight bit of turnout here, and drag that left foot in. Drag it along the floor. Can you feel that work deep inside your torso, connecting right up in the groin and that upper inner thigh? And for me, my hip wants to ride up a lot more on this left side. Just have less close range and lowering back down. And extending it back out. There's so much here about just noticing, right? Like I noticed the fact, let's do it again. I noticed the fact that this leg doesn't come as close in as my right leg without the hip riding up. I notice it. And with fine work like this, I can't muscle it into changing. That's just not how it works. I just notice it. And maybe the next time it's slightly different, simply through me noticing it and paying attention to it. And to me, that's part of also what makes this more of a meditation than a workout, right? Because we're creating deep change on a neurological level of how our body controls and thinks about our muscles. And that doesn't change through like, no pain, no gain, so just work hard, go hard or go home, whatever those inspirational t-shirts are. It changes through slow, steady observational work. All right, now that we've done a whole nice progression to open that up and give it some dynamics, we are going to do a little psoas release, a stretch for the psoas. And there are various different ways of stretching the psoas. If you want to check out my tutorial on lunge variations, there's some nice stuff there. That's a little bit more hardcore. We're going to do a really freaking gentle one. So all you need for this is a yoga block. And you're going to choose the setting between low, medium, and high, depending on your back and hip health. Most folks, I would recommend a low to medium. High is going to be for you hardcore, like yogi contortionists out there. I'm going to go for a medium setting today. And you just want to make sure that you're not on your lower back, you're on your butt. So you want the squish of your butt on the block. And you're going to pick up one leg. We're going to start with the left one and extend the other one out. And I'm just going to give this one a gentle, very gentle tug in towards my body. And at the same time, I'm going to lengthen this right leg out. So I'm trying to slide that right heel as far out as I can without letting a shift happen in my pelvis. So I'm trying to not let this happen, right? And I'm going to hang out here a little bit. This is a passive stretch. And I know I'm always talking about how great active flexibility is, and it is, trust me. But sometimes with this psoas muscle, because it's so aggro so much of the time, a nice, yummy passive stretch can be just the ticket. We are going to hang out here for approximately 30 seconds. I can see the clock over there. Just hang out with me. Now, if you're starting to have any lower back pain, please lower the setting of your yoga block. If even the lowest setting of the yoga block is too high, wrap up a towel, go lower. Because if your psoas is very tight, you can imagine it pulling your upper back or your lower back, into more of an arch, and you end up taking too much of the work in here. And that's not what we want. That's part of why we're pulling this opposite knee in, is to try to get our back to flatten out so that more of the opening happens in the hip. And at the same time, you might feel a little pulling on your knee. If that happens, soften the knee a little bit, because the psoas muscle attaches next to the adductors, which run down and attach to the knee. The whole thing is connected. Just pay attention to your body and see what it needs. But the hope is that as you hang out here for a little while, we've got about 5 more seconds, that this hip really gets to lengthen and you can start to feel a relaxation and an opening through that groin area where the psoas attaches. Let's go ahead and switch legs. So to switch legs, I'm going to put the right foot flat on the floor, lower the left leg down to it, lift the right leg up, make sure I'm nice and centered on the block, and slide that left leg away. And just notice what that left side feels like. Might feel real different. Might feel similar. Who knows? I'm trying to keep my hip bones nice and even, not let that right side waist hike up. And there's a fun thing you can do here to make this very slightly more active, which is to use the downstairs butt. It's the area right where the butt and the thigh come together on that left side, to gently press your heel into the floor and see if you can slide it a little further away. Just make sure that as you slide that heel away, it doesn't lift your back up. So as I'm sliding my left heel away, I'm also trying to pull my right knee in just a little bit more. And again, check in with your lower back, see how it feels. There's some abdominal engagement, can protect that lower back as well. There's that downstairs butt working. Check in with your knee. I can't see my lower leg, but I know it has a tendency to kind of wander off to the side a little bit like that. So I am slightly engaging my inner thigh to try to keep it going straight out from my hip. And if you let it go out to the side, you're going to miss some of the good psoas stretch that you want here. Let's hang out here for another 5, 7 seconds. And just breathe and see if you can get that hip to open up just a little bit more. Maybe pull that right knee in just a little bit more. Hold for 3, 2, 1. And we're going to switch sides again. Now we're going to do a slightly different variation, which I personally find a little bit more intense. Everybody's different. Some people find it easier. So again, I'm going to lift my left knee into my chest, and I'm going to slide that right heel away. So we're starting out in exactly the same position. I'm trying to find the length. I'm trying to protect my back. And then all I'm going to do to change this is open that left knee out to the side. Now, if your yoga block is feeling a little wobbly as you open this out, you can switch this to 2 yoga blocks side by side, or a foam roller, or a rolled up towel. There are a lot of different things. You want to make sure that you feel stable enough here. You don't feel like you're about to fall off your block. And by opening the knee out to the side and then gently pulling it up towards your left armpit, I find that this biases the psoas stretch even more in this hip. And especially after doing an earlier round with the knee in parallel, now I can really start to feel that psoas muscle open up. And let me tell you, it's pretty nice. And I really hope that you are having a similarly nice experience in getting that psoas muscle to lengthen. And we're going to hang out here for another 10 seconds. So one of the other nice things you can do here is just take some deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. If you want some more tutorials on how the diaphragm and breathing muscles relate to psoas, I got that too. And go ahead and bring that left knee back in. Lower that left foot down. There we go. And we're going to switch sides. Right knee comes up. Slide that left heel away. Support your back, anchor it down, make sure it's not lifting up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to grab that right knee and just open it out to the side. And I always feel this a little bit more on the left side. It's just a little crankier. That's when that breathing comes in. It's super handy. And I also notice that my pelvis is wanting to tilt here. So really trying to keep both hip bones in one line. Check in with that knee, make sure the leg's not wandering off to the side, and just enjoy the stretch wherever you're at with this. Like, one of the things that's great about passive stretching is that it can feel nice and relaxing and you feel good afterwards. And there is nothing to be discounted in feeling nice. I'm a really big fan of feeling nice, and I hope you are too. So if you're feeling a little nice with this, well, yay. Grab every one of those moments you can. All right, let's hang out here for just 2 more big breaths. So breathe with me in through the nose and out through the mouth. And see if you can get that right knee a little bit higher up into the right armpit. 1 more breath in. And longest breath out. Feel that diaphragm relax, ribs relax down towards the floor. And slide that left foot in. Bring the right knee in. Both feet back down the floor. Little lift up. Get rid of that block. Ooh. Hips come back down. And let's just windshield wiper those knees back and forth. And see how your hips feel. And see if they feel any looser, healthier. Maybe you feel a little bit looser in your lower back. All of these areas in here are influenced by the psoas. Like, by all these areas, I mean like your whole body, really. It's such a powerful, important muscle. And hopefully this has helped you get in touch with your psoas a little bit more and just love it a little bit more. Just love your psoas. So it will love you too. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Please take your time with this video. Just go real slow with it. This is a meditation for you and your body and your relationship with your body. There is no race. There is no showing off. There is no like finish line here. It's just about the relationship. Please ask any questions that you might have. Put any comments below. I love to hear from you. And as always, happy bendings.